pick 3 things you're going to do really well. Yes, you're going to work on 10 things, but at the end of the year, you want to make sure you hit the ball out of the park on the 3 most important things that are going to move the needle.
Today, we're discussing the challenges and opportunities of being a CMO at a PE-backed company. Now, if you've read any of my Saturday LinkedIn rants, you know that I'm not exactly a cheerleader for private equity, kind of based on what I hear from CMOs about some of the directives they receive. But today, I promise to bite my tongue, and really, because it's important that, to be fair to our guests, that to not ask them to critique the very firms that are signing their paychecks. So let's be clear about that. And the point of this show is to help B2B CMOs who are at PE-backed companies be more successful. Let's now welcome Alan Gonsenhauser, founder and CEO of Demand Revenue, who's previously joined us to talk about budgeting, fractional CMOing, and customer-led growth, and also happens to focus his practice on PE firms. So hello, Alan. Welcome back. How are you, and where are you this fine day?
Hi, Drew. Great to be back. And I'm wonderful. I'm in the Boston area and doing great.
So you heard from Kevin and Julie, and I imagine much of what they said resonated, but you also had some thoughts that you wanted to add to to build on some of the thoughts that they had.
Well, I say that I, like them, have had very positive experiences with private equity investors that I've worked with in their portfolio companies. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of disagreement there. And totally agree with what Kevin said about brand seeding demand, and also that it's really important. The best CMOs I've worked with at PE portfolio companies, like Kevin, as a great example, have made growth more predictable and more explainable. Not just we ran campaigns, but they understand pipeline coverage, they understand where it's coming from, and how to make the quarter. And they take the mystery out of marketing and for the board to see, and the PE sponsors to see what the value is of marketing.
Take the mystery out of marketing. I want to go deeper there. And I know you talk and write a lot about this, taking the mystery out.
Yes.
So let's break that down a little bit. And so an effective CMO at a PE-backed company, creating predictable pipeline feels like a really good thing to do. It's kind of hard, isn't it?
It's not the easiest thing to do, but you have to take the risk and you have to take ownership over the pipeline with sales. And, you have to be, you have to make the CEO's job easier by owning outcomes, not just activity, and being very tightly aligned with your peers. The head of sales, the CFO is a really important internal ally to have. That's your ticket, to the board and the PE sponsor. And, CMOs, the best CMOs are embedded in the business. They understand the investment thesis, they know the growth targets, and they align marketing to everything that the business is trying to do on an ongoing basis.
So it sounds wonderful. It sounds beautiful that, we own outcomes, not, marketing is there to impact the company in any number of ways, including driving pipeline and helping close faster and helping win big deals. Why, where does the problem begin then in these things? Because these are great things. Why wouldn't you want to own outcomes instead of things? What are some of the things that sometimes prevent CMOs from being successful to do the things that you're describing? Is it know-how, or is it some other structural thing?
Well, I've met a lot of great marketing people that are wonderful at marketing, but they act more like leaders of the marketing department rather than a P&L general manager. So you have to know how to translate the things in marketing to what the board cares about and what the CFO and the CEO and the C-suite cares about. Let me give you an example. So you can't just talk about we need to make more investments in brand or brand reputation. You have to translate that into what the financial implications of that would be. More at bat, because you're going to be on those short lists that Kevin was talking about earlier. You're going to have better win-loss ratio. You're going to have more pricing power. These are all things CFOs and boards care about. And so you have to look at marketing as a series of investments. And you can't track everything. We all know that. But you have to speak in a different language, not in marketing speak, but in business and financial terms to explain to people why we're making the investments we're making and what we think the impacts are going to be. And you have to commit yourself to some of those impacts and take some risk. So you'll be a real partner. It's acting more like a P&L general manager and the leader of a function, if that makes sense, Drew.
I mean, it totally makes sense to me. And it's funny because we've been having these conversations for 6 years in CMO huddles, and I feel like every CMO that we talked to, and I joked in one of your posts that I hope that because you made a comment about a CMO, I joked, yeah, I sure hope they aren't in huddles.
I hope there aren't many of them that do that anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've been talking about this. One of the issues that I bring up a lot is short-termism versus long-termism. Yes. When we used to think about marketing, you would say the marketer has their eye 18 months out, the sales has their eyes out a quarter. Right.
Right.
They're getting paid by quotas. And so what I hear where when the conflict of PE firms in my mind comes to pipeline, close, right? Revenue, when in fact, the things that the marketer is doing today will impact things not necessarily in the next 3 months.
Right. It goes back to what Kevin was saying. Brand feeds demand. And if you look at some of the research that's come out from Ehrenberg and also Sixth Sense, 95% of companies are not in the market to buy something today. They will be in the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months, but not today. But they are consuming content and developing short lists of vendors they will consider when they do go in market. And when they do go in market, 95% of the time, one of the vendors on that short list of 4 to 5 companies will win. So brand absolutely seeds demand. It helps win-loss ratios, pricing power, and some of those financial metrics. So it's really balancing the short and long-term objectives. And the other thing I'll say, if you've got the wrong ICP, I've seen companies that have brought on business that they couldn't renew or grow. And so you're just buying debt. You're not buying long-term growth. So that's another example where short and long-term thinking may be good for the current quarter. But if you can't retain those customers and grow them, you're buying churn, you're buying debt, and you're not buying your long-term financial success. So it's those kinds of conversations I have with investors, a lot of those with CFOs, talking about balancing short and long-term investments.
And that one feels like it comes completely down to what you incentivize, right? And what you measure. Yes. And if you tell salespeople, close, they're just looking at revenue, they don't care. They're going to close whatever they can close. But your point about get the right ICP and get the customer that's going to stay with you a year or 2 or 3 means that you have a lot of good data on not only this is the right ICP, but this is the ICP that will stick. And this is the question that sort of gets really tricky is it is an assumption that your next best customer is going to look like your last customer, which used to be true. This is a tricky one.
A couple of days ago, I did a LinkedIn Live just on that topic, the 8 traps of how people consider their ICP. And the first thing I recommend is do a customer cohort analysis of those segments of customers, look at the win-loss ratios, look at the gross revenue retention, and look at the net revenue retention, and triangulate between them. So look at segments of customers that you can more easily get, keep, and grow, and then look at the external positive market um, headwinds and tailwinds, and your internal capabilities to be successful, that you're actually ready, and balance those two, and you'll know where to devote your investments. Speed of execution setting is really important. The board and the sponsor is going to want to know what your priorities are and your thesis in the first few weeks. You may, if it's a much larger company, and maybe have a lot more time to develop that. But in, PE firms go very quickly, as Kevin said, and speed of life. The second surprise is how financially fluent you need to be. You really need to begin to understand the P&L, even as a marketing person. And as I said earlier, talk that talk so the board can appreciate what you're communicating to them in the language they're used to. I mean, most PE members have been CEOs and CFOs, and that's the language they speak. So CMOs, the most successful ones, learn to speak that language and communicate properly.
Yeah, and it's funny. I don't think there's any excuse today with given access to GPTs, because you could then do analysis on your own and learn the language and actually role play with a CFO GPT. You could do all those things to prepare. So it's a little harder to claim ignorance. Not that you ever would have wanted to, but it's easier to get up to speed fast.
To your point, Drew, I was going to say, with one client, I set up a virtual board where you put in everybody's LinkedIn profiles of all the board members, and this person can actually communicate. And the board members talk to each other, and you can put PowerPoints in, and they can opine on what you're going to talk about, your talk track, your story, your presentation before the board meeting, which is really helpful to prepare.
It's no doubt that. And I imagine that same process, you can put it, whatever you're planning to present, through that and anticipate what they're going to say, what questions they're going to ask.
That's what it's for. Exactly.
Yeah, and that has got to be helpful. Success, folks. In an ideal world, those calls are being recorded. That's probably the most valuable database that you have, because it's language that they use, it's issues, it's probably competitive information faster than you've ever been able to get it before. But that's both sales calls and customer calls. But also, back to Alan's point about ICP, you can start to see patterns in the customer success people. If there's a consistent group of whiners, maybe that is, and they look like this, the same group of people, then maybe that's not the ICP. But your customer success people can really play a role in helping you understand that. And what we're talking about is a very complex ecosystem. Customer in the middle, customer success, sales, marketing, and then you got finance on the outside of this. I'm just curious, as you figure out how to invest your time, do you think, being at a PE-backed company, you're investing your time a little bit differently than you might at another company? And I just wonder about that. And Alan, you've worked with a lot of PE-backed companies. Are you approaching it slightly differently?
I think there are a few things that are really important, maybe three things. One is prioritization. You can't boil the ocean. You can't do everything. So I think, and I coach a lot of CMOs for this, pick three things you're going to do really well. Yes, you're going to work on 10 things, but at the end of the year, you want to make sure you hit the ball out of the park on the three most important things that are going to move the needle. So don't try to do everything. Prioritize. Number one, talent and structure of your organization. It's critically important to have the right team. If you bring on folks that are not on the right team, that can really hurt you for a long time. And be careful what goes into your board dashboard. Have a really aligned definition of what good looks like for the organization. Make sure you're totally in line with the CFO and the board. And don't just report to the board. Use the board for a conversation, to get their input, to get their advice. As Kevin mentioned, you're working with many portfolio companies. Some of the things they bring from other companies may be really useful. Not everything. Some don't apply, obviously. But use the board meetings as a conversation to develop their relationship and get their input as well.
Thank you, Kevin, Julie, Alan. You're all great sports. Thank you, audience, for staying with us.